Welcome, everybody, to the Tuesday Night Smite podcast, a podcast with more longevity than Vivian's career. My name is Dog. I'm here today with Sabo, as always, and today we're bringing you episode 19 of the podcast, and we're going to be talking about the fall split, about week 4 of it, of course, because that's what happened last week, and we're going to recap that for a bit. So yeah. Sabo, how was your week? Just out of curiosity.
As far as Smite goes, or just in general?
Just both. Tell me about both.
Right, in general, I had a pretty good week, I guess. I mean, yeah, kind of put me on the spot there.
Yeah.
As far as Smite goes, though, this past week, week 4's left a lot of questions going into the final week, and it should be a fun final week of the split, at the very least.
Yeah. Sure, there will be plenty of stuff to discuss, so let's head right into it, I guess. And let's start with the EU side, as always. And yeah, what is the first side that you really want to talk about?
Well, I want to look at the Valence and Dignitas split from, I believe it was Thursday.
I think so, yeah. Let me check. Yeah, it was. The first game on Thursday.
So it was kind of a tale of two games. Just to, we know total kills aren't usually indicative to what happened in the game, but it's a good indicator here about how each game went. Game 1 was a Dignitas win, and they had 11 total kills compared to 1 for Valence. Game 2, which was a Valence squad one, it was 21 kills for Valence and only 2 kills for Dignitas. So it's, like I said, it's not that total kills are usually indicative as to how the game went, but story is told here.
Yeah, I think that's, in this case it really is indicative. I think because the score lines really suggest that it was a stomp, and it really was one in both games, right? It felt like in either game the team that was behind from the start, or that fell behind first to a pretty large degree, right? They never really had a chance to come back into it because it didn't look like Valence or Dig both really misplayed with their lead, if you want to express it that way, right? So they didn't throw the lead away, and that's what really kept the enemy team from having a chance to really get back into it, right?
Yeah, they both teams played very well with the lead. It was again, we go back to the whoever wins the solo lane side of the map, the jungle solo combination over there, usually wins the game. And game 1 for Ratty and Kivo Fred controlled Ducky on the Kakolan very well. Fails couldn't find much to go do with the Nija. Of course, Variety was on tier, so controlling that side of the map is usually what he does on tier. But flip it around to game 2, and you see Ducky and Fails controlling that side of the map. Variety doesn't get off to the start he wants to on tier. QO Fred can't find really anything to do on the Rabana jungle, and it kind of snowballed from just based on who won that side of the map in both games. And a credit to Funballer in game 2 with an 8-0-8 scoreline. Tricks Tank, though, was 0-8-0, so it kind of flip-flopped that around.
Yeah, I think you're making a good point here. It's a bit surprising how it happened, though, right? When you think about it, the comps that they drafted, it didn't really seem like the team that lost had less early pressure on the solo side. I mean, if you compare a Kokolin and a Naja to Tyr and Nemesis, I would say that the Tyr and Nemesis are supposed to come are no, the Colin and the Naja are supposed to come out ahead most of the time. And when you compare the other games, looking at Osiris Susanoo against Tyr and Ravana, like the double warriors, that's what they're known for. They're known for being extremely good at the very start of the game compared to the assassins, and that's a bit surprising to me. But yeah, it ended up going well for both teams in both cases that had really the worst level 1, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's just recognizing, or I guess the failure to recognize, and I don't want to say that about pro league players, but it's the failure to recognize your level 1 power there. I mean, Colin and Nija, they just based on their abilities and that they're in fact high pressure at the very beginning, right? Like more pressure than what Nemesis can bring from that jungle. But like you said, in game 2 with the double warrior comp, they really got outpushed.
Yeah, that's just not supposed to happen, really.
Like I say, it's a failure to recognize your level 1 strengths. I mean, like the double warrior should win that out in that game 2, but they ended up losing that game. And like we said in game 1, the Nishan and the Kakolan should win that pressure lane there, but it didn't really work out that way. It was the other side with Nemesis and Tyr. So
yeah,
it doesn't. It's not often that you could say that, and I probably am wrong to a certain extent, but for Variety Cuvo Fred to not realize their strengths on the double warriors early, that was surprising.
Yeah, and
or maybe not realize, but take advantage of their level 1 strengths.
Yeah, I think that's the main takeaway. The main takeaway is that they should have been able to do more, but through some circumstances they weren't. And I don't remember exactly how the game went, what led to the loss, right? What I do remember, at least not on the solo side, what I do remember is how Funball played. And the scoreline already suggested, right, he was 8-0 and 8. And when you looked at the game, you saw that he had a massive impact with that 8-0 and 8, that he wasn't just somehow padding his stats, right? He really was sort of the catalyst for them winning fights in the dual lane side and towards mid a bit later in the game. And yeah, I think the main focus in game 2 was really on him, and he showed up massively.
Well, give credit to the rest of Valent's squad. They really realized that if they let Trix Tank get off to a good start on the Sylvanas, that healing factor that he brings really, tips the scales into Dignitas's favor. By putting him behind early and keeping him down with the final scoreline of 0-8 and 0, that healing factor that he brings was not there. And you see, like, teams not building anti-heal against, Hercules.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
But teams not building anti-heal. If you're going to go with the let's not build anti-heal route, then take their healer, which most healers don't have a movement increase ability, a dash, whatever it is. Most of them are sitting ducks if you can get to them early and put them in your back line where they can't really escape. And they did that with Trixting on the Sylvanas, and it was very good capitalizing on that factor for Valent's squad.
Yeah, I'm not even sure if that was the biggest impact, right? They talked about it on the broadcast as well, how them focusing him didn't really put him down too much as compared to Big Man Things, right? I think it was one level down to Big Man, and he was 0-3 and 0 already, and it was only like 15 minutes into the game or so. And the thing that really changed how the fights went for me was that they were consistently able to then pick off Arkell on the Chronos, right? Because if you can keep the Chronos down, then you're not giving the team a chance to recover as well, because the Chronos is going to be their big late game carry, and he was never really able to get to that form because he also kept getting killed. And that was only after, or well, I think that was the Sylvanas being down played a role there as well, right? Because once your support is down, he's going to have a harder time protecting his carries, at least to a certain degree, and I think that was still an impact, but them starting to focus on Arkell specifically, I think, was the bigger thing that led to their victory than them necessarily bringing Trix down to 0 and 8.
Well, see Sylvanas with that heal, if he gets that heal up on Chronos, that could mean the difference between getting a rewind off and dying. And so,
yeah, but see, the thing is, was he really that far behind? Because I don't think he was. Of course, he's against the Fafnir, so Fafnir's always going to be ahead of him, but all in all, I don't think he was too far behind in gold and too far behind in XP.
I don't want to make it about him being too far behind or how far he was behind. The fact that they kept putting him down, they kept taking him out of these fights where Sylvanas has to be in these fights to make an impact, whether it's with his heal or his knockup or his root or whatever, his pull. If you take him out, the rest of the team is not as effective as they are hoping to be.
Yeah.
Like Tyr brings a lot of push power, a lot of control to that team fights. Robin brings a root and not much else as in the ways of CC for a team fight. Sylvanas, a pull, a root, a knockup, and a heal. I mean, it's a pretty impactful character to play if you're going to pick him. And for Valence to recognize that and keep putting Trix Tank down, putting him back in the base with a respawn timer, I mean, that, to me, that affected a lot of the fights that, Valence ended up taking in Game 2.
To me, I think it was more that they were able to pick a lot of big members off a lot of the time, right? There's one scene where I think it was Fails who was hiding on the other side, or where they were doing Portal Demon. Fails was hiding on the other side of the wall. Then you see, I think it was Arkell actually. Arkell pushing in, just getting blown up because he was being focused by 5 people, because he didn't see the Susanoo there, and he was just able to pull him in and destroy him before he got his ult off. And I don't think the Sylvanas would have helped there, even if he was further up, because, well, most of the enemies that he was facing would have immuned a lot of the damage anyway, right? Faf, you can't ult a Faf if he's playing well, because he's going to be too far away from the rest of his team. Susanoo, yeah, you can knock him up, but his ult's still going to go off, and your Chronos is still going to die. The Osiris is really just there to keep the terror on people and kill them that way, or he's going to ult your ult in response, and that kind of stuff, right? And I don't think the Sylvanas would have done much there, even if he was ahead. And I think it was more just the issue of Dig making it too easy for Valence to really pick them off effectively. If you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And again, I think there's other specific situations like that, right? We saw Variety sneak around, or trying to sneak around the back at some point, when they were already really far behind, so that he had to do something, to be fair to him, right? But still, he got found out, and he just got turned on with no one being in range to really help him from his own team. And yeah, those are 2 specific scenarios where I don't think the comp necessarily was the issue, or where I don't think even the Sylvanas being behind was the issue, right? I think that's just Dig misplaying to a certain degree, and I think that's what really made this game be as dominant from Valence as it was.
see your point. I understand. Like being picked, Dignitas made himself, being picked out, too often. That was really mis, misplays on their part, positioning badly or poorly, and Valence taking advantage of it. And reason I'm looking at the draft for them, maybe it's not a bad team comp altogether, but the Susanoo pick from Fails with that pull in against a Almus and Cobb who doesn't have a movement dash, any kind of movement ability. Sylvanas, I've already talked about not having any movement abilities. And if Kronos's movement is all based on his rewind, 8 seconds if he pops that and gets it off and he's 8 seconds behind or where he was 8 seconds ago, he could have been completely out of the team fight. But Susanoo with the pull, you pull AMC in, pull Sylvanas in, pull Tyr in. Even if Tyr's in the middle of his Fearless Power Cleave combination, that pull can interrupt that combination. And it's not, Susanoo's not like a top pick right now, but it was a good application and good recognition from Fails to realize that this pull, the Susanoo pull really could cause a lot of that poor positioning by Dignitas.
Yeah, I think in a lot of cases when you compare these two picks specifically, right, the Almusin Cobb and the Kronos to other mages and hunters that he could have picked, they don't really have a way to immune the pull, right? And they have to get fairly close to do their damage, right? Sure, it's still 55 units, but that's a small enough distance between you and the Susanoo to where he can comfortably get closer and then pull you. And then you have no tool to counter that. You have no tool that's going to make you safe from being pulled in and being just piled on by the rest of the team. Whereas other mages, like a Foff, again, a Foff is going to have enough range to stay away from the Susanoo and not be pulled in. A Scylla can ult to immune the pull, same as a lot of other mages out there. And yeah, I think the pick worked really well for what it was trying to do, and it executed it perfectly. Yeah, fully agree with you there.
And looking at the bigger picture right now, the split for Dignitas doesn't hurt them as far as, finishing in the top two. Like right now, as the standings are, they're 7 points up on Elevate, and Elevate's in that third spot. So there's no way that Dignitas is going to finish lower than 2. What it hurts them is they still have a set against Obey, and if Obey can find a 2-0 on Thursday, the Dignitas and Obey set is just for fun. Not going to help, not going to affect anything. And so, in this case, with Valence taking a game off of Dignitas, that affects their week 5 because, like I said, Obey faces Elevate on Thursday. And if Obey can 2-0 that, then we get to see the top 2 teams in EU have a little bit of fun because it won't matter. The set won't matter.
Yeah, and I think that would be interesting to look forward to as well, obviously. But yeah, overall the team has just struggled a lot this split, right? They've only split 2 sets, which isn't bad, right, against both Valence and Energy. So far that is, right? They could still easily drop one to Obey, because Obey, in comparison to Dig, or in contrast to Dig, they have looked flawless this split so far. They've won all of their games. That's basically as flawless as you can look. And yeah, considering also how previous matchups between those 2 teams have went, right, or have gone, it's also going to be interesting just because Obey has, I think, won every matchup so far. I'm not entirely sure about how they played in the spring split, But then at Smite Masters, Obey obviously wound up winning the Spring Split LAN Smite Masters, right? Then again, we saw them play in the summer, where Obey managed to find a 2-0 over a Dig who was already guaranteed as the first seed from EU then, because they had looked so good during the rest of the split. And now it's going to be another rematch, right? Because they didn't face at DreamHack Valencia, actually. So yeah, it is an interesting matchup. I'm really excited to see whether Dig is going to be able to actually pull something out and actually find a way to really contest with Obey, because so far they've really been lacking that, I think.
I think, again, depending on how the Thursday set goes, that both teams could use this set not to reveal any kind of strategy, but test a few things out. Like if it's already out of contention and Obey has 18 points and Dignitas can't catch them, even with the 2-0, and then we could see a couple of stuff, a couple of things we weren't expecting to see or we don't usually see. And both teams just testing out some stuff, maybe not revealing any kind of strategies, but maybe, having a pick here that you wouldn't find out. Hell, we might see Arachne jungle. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there. But
Well, I want to see Dachi jungle, man. Still. It's not going to happen, but I really want to see it.
But yeah, again, Arachne, Dachi, maybe, hell, we'll see Kukulkan jungle. I don't know.
But, hey, we're not in NA.
But it's going to be an interesting matchup, to say the least. And if that does end up happening and it's too far out of, if the points are too much for Dignitas to overcome, then I don't think we can take anything from this set other than maybe a couple of points, because it's going to be a fun set, and it's really not going to affect anything after Obey beats Elevate 2-0. But it's like going back to what you said, you want to see how Dignitas if Dignitas can find a win over Obey, considering the fact that they haven't really beat Obey yet this season. I would say if this ends up being just a joke match with some fun and games, not to read too much into it.
Yeah, but see, this is the reason why I think it might not end up being that, because there is I think there is some, they have a bit of a gripe with Obey, and if that is the case, then I can easily see them try as hard as they can, and also see, obviously, Obey try as hard as they can to actually win that set between the two of them. And if that were to happen, we would obviously see some great Smite being played.
Well, I get your point, but this is number one and this is number two. Depending on who is in that third and fourth spot, we're probably going to see these two teams at the finals of Super Regionals for the EU side. And with that being a 5-game set, I don't think they want to reveal too much here.
Yeah, sure. I could understand that, right? But I think you can still run the same comps you've been running all split that everyone else has seen already, and try to win a game that way. At least see if, with what you have right now, if you can actually try and contest Obey.
I mean, if Elevate finds a split, then all this talk is for nothing. And Obey and Dignitas are
but let's be real.
Fighting for that. Elevate 2-0 energy, and nobody thought they could 2-0 energy. So, just throwing that out there.
Speaking of energy, you know who also managed to beat energy at least in one set, in one game? Burrito. Also this week. How did that happen?
You tell me because I can't really. I can't. I don't know how that happened. I watched the game and I'm trying to figure out what the hell's going on. Uh, Johnny on the Ratatasker game one, 6-0-6, and as a response in game two, Energy banned out the Ratatasker first. That
Yeah.
I mean, you can point it at that, but like uh, I don't know, like I don't know how that happened.
Yeah.
To me,
Weird things are happening,
to me,
right?
yeah, to me it was basically all on Johnny and just Spanify Farrakirk finding you know, good combinations off of what Johnny was able to do with the knockups and all the damage he was able to put out on the Ratatasker.
Yeah. See, what I think it comes down to is, and we've said his name a lot, right? Adapting again. He didn't look good in this set. He didn't look like the adapting we know and love. He just looked like a normal jungler, which is not what he should look like if they actually want to be a top EU team. Because let's be clear about this, right? In game two, it was not adapting who hard carried this team. It was someone who maybe most people weren't even expecting to hard carry games for Energy in the first place, Maniac. And that is worrying, right? If Maniac has to pop off for your team to actually win a match against Burrito of all teams, what does that tell you about the team itself?
Well, it tells me that they're in trouble, even though we hyped them up last week about how they're back on track. And
Yeah, because because adapting actually looked good last week, but this week he didn't.
yeah, that it was all on Maniac. That game two win was all on Maniac and Emilito on Mascotti, but you're right. Adapting didn't look at it like himself at all in either of these two games. Uh, Johnny in game one, I think, had maybe a 3-level lead at one time over adapting. And, how often do we say that? Or, how often in the past 2 years have we said that? You know,
Yeah. Well,
that
they didn't even play against each other much in the year before this one, right? So we probably didn't say it too many times, yeah.
but not just Johnny,
Yeah.
anybody. Like, Cubo Fred and Captain Twig and, how often have we said that any other jungler has a 3-level lead on adapting? Like a 1-level lead, yeah, maybe that's a little bit of farming and maybe adapting that once or twice and missed out on a wave or two, and he's a level behind. But for him to be 3 levels behind, like that's like I don't think we've said that at all.
Yeah. I think what is very telling is we used to always call adapting the best jungler in EU, right? There was some contention potentially at times, like in the fall of season two, I think it was, or season three, fall of season three, I think, with Cuba Fred also looking amazing. But then again, it was an even match right now. Right now, adapting isn't looking like he's in contention for best jungler in EU because he has been so inconsistent this split, and that is something that I wasn't expecting to ever say, at least not one season, less than a season after they win a damn world championship. And I don't know what's wrong with him, and it's just really hurting Energy, as we can obviously see, right? They only made 1 point this week out of two sets, one against Obey as well, obviously, where they got 2-0'd. So yeah, Energy is not looking too good, and we said last week that we thought they were going to be the third team or the third seed out of EU going into Super Regionals. Right now, I'm not sure if it's still looking like that.
They may end up being the 6th seed because Ravel's 1 point behind them. But Ravel has Burrito on Thursday. So if Ravel 2-0's Burrito and gets 8 points. Rival's all of a sudden in third, and then Saturday, Energy and Rival play. And if Energy can't find a 2-0, you know, Energy is out of the Super Regionals. And I don't did they split with Valence or did they 2-0 Valence?
Energy?
Yeah.
I think they split with them at the very start of the split, right? Yeah, they split with them
Yeah.
in week one.
Very first. But again, Elevate or Valence has Elevate on Saturday as well, and they're both at 7. So if Elevate, even if they split and end up both with 8 points, if Rival 2-0's Energy is in the 6th seed. Like they're not even in Super Regionals. They're lucky to be in the league.
Well, Poppies and Burrito are in a class of their own, to be fair. But yeah, like you've got a point there.
Say that, but Burrito split with Energy, and correct me if I'm wrong, Poppies did too.
Really? Let me check. I need to check this.
They 2-0 Poppies. I think that was their only.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, I think that was their only win that was their only 2-0 of the split. So
yeah. And we talked about it already that Rival has got a bit of a. Well, they still have Burrito left, or we said last week, right, that both Rival and Energy have an easier rest of the split than Elevate and Valence do. Now that Energy has lost to Burrito, they really don't anymore because facing Rival is not going to be a great matchup for them, I think, and Elevate still got 2 games left, right? They can still get some points. Valence has obviously only got Elevate left to face, so I think all of these teams right now still have a chance to make it to Super Regionals, depending on how their matchups go, right? For the most part, if 2 teams end up getting a 3-0 over the other, they should really qualify. Unless, again, Elevate ends up upsetting Obey in some form.
Well, the only way Energy gets into Super Regionals right now is if they 2-0 Rival. I would put them at 9 points, and even if Elevate or Valence somehow find the 2-0 over each other, they're still ahead of the 7 points that the loser of that set would have, and so they would be the 4 seed.
Oh, do you know what I see here right now?
Yeah, what's up?
I see potential for another 3-way tie.
Yeah, I was getting to that.
Yeah, go on.
If Rival 2-0s and they get if Rival 2-0s Burrito and they get put at 8 points, but Energy 2-0s Rival and they get to 9 points, and then Elevate and Valence split and they're both at 8 points. You got a 3-way tie between Elevate, Valence, and Rival. And then Rival is 2-0 Elevate, and did Valence 2-0 Rival, or did they split with Rival?
I think they split, but I can go check real quick. They split, yeah. So Rival would have to head-to-head in that situation, right?
Yeah, Rival would have the head-to-head.
Yeah.
Well, no, Elevate would be out, even though they split with Rival.
They would both be out.
No, Rival and Rival and Valence would both be at 8 with a split, so they would have to face off one game play-in. Elevate would already be out because they lost 2-0 to Rival.
Wait, okay. I need to check the rules again, but the way I thought it was you compare the head-to-head among all three teams that are tied, and
Yeah,
then
you're
the
comparing.
team with the best head-to-head gets the first seed if there is any. Right, so rival would have the best head-to-head overall with a 3-1. But I can go and check because that is an interesting question.
Okay.
So it just says here, in a case of a three-way tie, the team with the better head-to-head record will prevail. Thereafter, if a tie still remains, a match will be played between each of the three teams. So I'm
Yeah,
not
it's
sure.
fucked up.
We would have to see, honestly, and it would be really exciting as well. So yeah, let's hope all of that happens so we get to see ties and we get to see how Hi-Rez actually resolves those sort of ties.
Well, it's all for moot if rival and energy split, and rival ends up at 9 points. And elevate and valence, if they split, and they both end up at 8 points. They have to play another game. They have to play a third game as a
Yeah.
play-in game.
And if one of the two wins, Energy would be at 7 points together with one of the other of the two. Again, unless Elevate takes a game off of Obey, as always. And in that case, Energy and that team will have to do a tiebreaker for 5th place, so it wouldn't really matter. But still.
If energy splits, energy's out. Like,
yeah, of course.
And even if Elevate 2O's valence, valence and energy both at 7 points.
Oh, wait.
Rival has 9, and so there's your top 4, and valence and energy are in 5th and 6th, and their tiebreaker only is determined but on who gets that final, or who's the final boss at the gauntlet. Like, is energy the final boss or valence the final boss? Like,
so I want to say something. If energy splits, they still have a chance to get into Super Regionals, and that is if Elevate win the matchup against Valence, and if Rival also splits against Burrito. Because then all of those teams would be at 7 points. And they would be tied, a three-way tie for 4th place again.
Is Burrito really going to split with Rival?
Hey, they did it with energy.
Yeah, but that's energy.
Hey, maybe Ice doesn't show up either, and Johnny carries against them too, and suddenly we have a three-way tie.
There's a lot of moving parts in the EU, and that's going back to what I said.
Also, I want to point out real quick, if Burrito, actually 2-0 Rival, and 2-0 Poppies, they could be going into Super Regionals.
Yeah, a lot of crap has to happen, even if they 2-0 both of those players. Both of those teams.
Yeah.
They're looking at 8 points. Energy and Rival would have to split. Elevate and Valence, one of them would have to 2-0 the other. And on top of that, Burrito would have to 2-0 both of those two teams. So there's a lot of crap that has to happen for Burrito to make it.
Well, Energy and Rival wouldn't even have to split, because if Rival wins, they're also going to get to 8 points, just as Burrito, and then head-to-head is going to matter. Which Burrito would obviously have, because they have to 2-0 Rival in the first place to get to to get to 8 points.
All right, enough talk. Make your predictions. Who's going to?
Already now, we've got one set left to cover. But sure, let's do predictions. Okay. So, do I want to go bold or do I want to go home? I don't know. So, I think Rival's gonna make it. I think Rival are going to get at least 4 points this week. Probably 6, looking at how Energy's playing right now. So they would be at either 11 or 9 points, obviously. And then I'm not sure if Elevate or Valence are more likely to make it. I think it could easily be a tie between them, and then they'd have to play a tiebreaker match where I would probably slightly favor Elevate. So yeah, I think I'm giving it to
Right.
them.
Who's number 3 and who's number 4?
Okay, Rival are number 3, Elevate are number 4.
See, I agree with you, but I'm flopping them around. I think Rival ends up with 9 points, and Elevate finds the 2-0 over Valence. And it's Elevate with 10 points at number 3, and Rival at 9 points with number 4. Or with 9 points at, yeah, I said that right. Never mind.
So what I want to know in that case is, why do you think Elevate is going to find a 2-0 over the team who just split with Dignitas?
I think Elevate, I think Tardes doesn't play Nijal support. And I think the team, I think No Numbers actually decides to play the game instead of napping through the entire set.
Yeah. That makes sense. But so I just want to clarify one thing as well. So you don't think that Rival is going to 2-0 Energy either, right? Because 2-0ing Energy would put Rival at 11 points if they 2-0 both sets against Burrito and Energy, which would still put him ahead of Elevate.
I end up I'm thinking that's a split. Rival 2-0's Burrito and then splits with Energy.
Okay.
Elevate goes Valence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
I've already alluded to it somewhat, but Tardes on the Nijal support against Rival this week.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of led. Yeah, we saw him pick up first blood on it. Well, actually, Death Panther got first blood, but that was off of a Nijal Tardes ult. So the follow up with Toth ult being able to finish off that kill and pick up first blood. And then nothing else happened for them after that. Dardes ended up going 1-7-4. Was at times really cut out position. Ice Ice Baby on the Odin, doing a wonderful job, just kind of caging, realizing that a lot of these characters in Game 1 for Elevate couldn't get out of the cage. An anti-healing shuts down Arlong Shin's ultimate. Toph can't escape once, Nishal's only escape is if he takes somebody up in the air and waits out the Odin cage, but good pick from Ice Ice Baby to really counter all of that. And then both games of the set, Boat just goes off, going 15-1 and 9 or 15-2 and 9 over the two games. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, as you said, the Odin pick, great idea. Just to clarify what the teams were, right? We're looking at Erlang Shen and Hunbats, Faf, Naja, and Freya on Elevate in that first game. And out of those, only one has a reliable way out of the cage, which is obviously the Hunbats. Charmaine on the Freya would have to have used his ultimate to get out, and that is obviously an issue in of itself. And yeah, when you consider that, the pick is amazing, especially against the Erlang Shen, as you said, where it shuts down the healing from the ultimate, which is a big part of what makes Erlang Shen a tanky character, right? He's not necessarily got a lot of other tools that make him a great tank. And yeah, the pick in that regard makes sense. As you said, Vote played amazing the entire set. Wolfie in game 1 also, I thought, had a very big impact. So yeah, on the Giannis, no less, right? The Giannis, which we haven't seen too much, especially now that Lulissa is no longer in the SPL. And we saw him in both games of this set, once on Wolvie and once on Death Panther. And yeah, it performed well in both of them, I think. But yeah, it's always nice to see a bit of Giannis, honestly.
Yeah, there's two ways you can play Giannis. I mean, he does. His damage is somewhat unreliable because there's only two damaging abilities in his it. That's the two in the ultimate. So it's a little bit
the one does
unreliable
damage
as
as
far
well.
as team fights go. Huh?
Well, the one does damage as well, but it's just not used all that often on enemies, or at least not when it's not really safe to do so.
More often used for him to get somebody out or get out of a precarious position. And so, his damage, the one does damage, but if you're using it for damage at a pro level, you're probably getting killed a lot.
Yeah.
Probably dying too many times. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think a big difference. I think a big difference between him and the traditional mid mage is that the type of damage he has is a lot less area focused than other mages, right? Unstable Vortex, it does a lot of damage in a fairly small area, right? All the points where it really connects. Outside of that, it is manageable damage if you're getting hit by it. The ult obviously does a lot of damage, but it is a bit hard to hit on multiple people. If you compare it to Farfold, especially, Farfold just comes out quite a lot faster, and also, unless you're hitting them from really far away with the Giannis ult, it's going to do more damage as well. And yeah, also obviously the Farf 3-1 combo, it's going to hit everyone in the entire circle for the full damage that you're hitting it with. So it's a lot more damage than Giannis 2 would be, for example, against a lot more opponents potentially. So yeah, I think that's always been his biggest downside, has been that he doesn't really have what you usually want from a traditional mage, which is that large AoE damage.
Yeah, that's where he struggles a lot. I mean, his ultimate does a lot of damage if you can hit somebody with it, but it's very hard to hit somebody with it. It's not very big circle coming through the walls, and you can dodge it even if you're not even trying to dodge it because it goes in a straight line, and if you're just walking and he fires it at you while you're walking, you're automatically going to be out of it because you're still walking in that same direction. But yeah, the objective secure, his objective secure is a little bad. That's why we don't see him a lot. Gods like Scylla, Raijin, Toth, Ra, Vulcan as well have these big AoE ults for the objective secures like the Gold Fury and the Fire Giant, and Giannis doesn't have that. Giannis can still. I think we've seen it already. This split, how Giannis can steal a Fire Giant from the other side of the map with his ultimate.
This set, actually, I think.
But that's not calculated. That's luck. And you don't. If you're a professional team, you don't want to put your entire win-loss scenario on luck alone, right?
Yeah.
You want to have a plan other than let's just go be lucky and win this.
Yeah, if you're trying to flip coins to get wins, you're not gonna end up usually with a lot more than 50% wins, which usually isn't enough. And that's basically the entire issue if you have luck-based things, right? So yeah, we saw the Giannis both matches from the two different teams, and I think in the case of Elevate, it's an interesting discussion to have as well, because obviously Giannis was the prime god of Nulissa, and how does Death Panther's performance on him compare to what Nolissa would have brought for Elevate? What did you think?
Well, kind of hard to compare the two because they played it vastly different. Um, Death Panther, I feel, is more effective on these aggressive gods like a Vulcan or a Toph or something. He can just do a lot of damage on, and not so much for the setup potential or the escape routes or whatever Giannis brings to the team. So I don't want to compare the two based on how they would play because to me they just you're comparing a mid laner that was really good at porting her team in and out of good and bad positions and just the movement around versus a mid laner that thrives off of just doing huge amounts of damage and picking up kills and finishing off kills that way. So,
Yeah, in that case, I think an interesting discussion to have is, was the Giannis a bad pick for Elevate in this case, and do you think they were sort of misled into picking him due to the success that they've had on the previous roster with Nolissa playing him?
well, they obviously had a plan when they picked him up, other than let's use it the way that we've always used it. Because if that's the case, that's poor talent management in recognizing that it's not what Death Panther likes to do or what he necessarily wants, and you're just giving it to him to play exactly like Nulissa would, and I don't think that is a good way of going about it. You got to realize the strengths, and if you're picking a god thinking that it's going to play out the same way with two different players, I think you're asking a little too much.
Yeah, yeah. I think the reason you can criticize the pick, or the reason you can criticize the team overall, is if they did go for this pick with that type of mentality, then at that point you could have just kept Nulissa, right? Because I think we didn't talk much about what we thought about Death Panther overall, right? We said we would revisit the topic in week 3, but then we didn't. So maybe to revisit the topic again, where do we think Death Panther stands right now? Where do we think overall he is in comparison to Nolissa, or just specifically on this Elevate roster? Sabo?
I think he I think he fits better with this roster than Nulissa did. Clarify what I mean. Uh, we know Jermaine and Dardes are going to fight. We know they like to fight. We know they prefer somebody who wants to fight. Chario's one of Chario's best picks in the jungle is that Humbats, which is if you have the lead, you want to play very aggressive on Humbats and use that Fear No Evil ult as many times as you can. And with a player like Death Panther, who coming into the split, whose kill death ratio was a little bit, what's the word? Obscure. Like it was misleading. It was misleading, right? Because he played support in the spring split for a bad, bad, bad. What's the team of the name of the team?
Sanguine.
Sanguine, yeah. Bad Sanguine team. And then he played middle for a bad Burrito team. So his numbers were a little bit misleading coming into this. But his style of play that that aggressive style of play that we know Jermaine and Dardes like. To me, it was a lot like E United was in the fall or in the summer. There was a lot of aggression, and no one really to, pull them back when they got over aggressive. This is kind of what I see with this team, with this Elevate team. Death Panther, we know, like I said, we know Jermaine and Dardes want to be aggressive. Death Panther is okay with being aggressive. Cherio's okay with being aggressive. So if the mentality of the team is to just be aggressive, then he fits with the team perfectly.
Yeah, and I was questioning at the start whether that system would work, right? Whether having that many aggressive players would work out for the team. Because Nolissa was the one who gave them a bit of safety, I thought. And now that she's gone, the team has obviously looked better, but I think it's partially because the meta is favoring that type of aggression right now, right? We see a lot of games snowball very quickly out of control. And if you're being heavily aggressive, especially in that mid jungle support combination, which they obviously are now, then that can really put you in a good position if you manage to actually snowball off of that. And I think that's to a large degree what Elevate has done this split so far, why they've found 2 2-0s and one over who did they 2-0? Energy, yeah, of course. So yeah, I think the move overall, now looking back at it, was a good one. But only really, in my opinion, because the meta really favored that type of playstyle that they're going for right now. Yeah. So yeah, I guess you also agree with the move, as you said, right?
Yeah, I agree with the move because it fits. Like I said, it fits the style, the play style of the team. Let's just be aggressive. And Death Panther is a lot more aggressive than Nulissa. Like you said, Nulissa brought safety to the team that Death Panther is not. And the meta is trending towards that let's be aggressive style of play. Where if you find an early lead and you're able to snowball off of that, and the game doesn't go past 35 minutes, then it's really helping an aggressive team like Elevate.
Yeah. So yeah, is there anything else you want to talk about on the EU side? Because we've already done predictions, so should we move on?
Yes. Move on.
So yeah, NA, that is your territory, so I'm just gonna throw it to you again.
Well, the first set that I want to talk about was the Thursday set between LG and Trifecta. LG 2-0 Trifecta, which keeps them, it technically puts them 1 point ahead of EU United. Let me say that again because I emphasized EU for some damn reason. It technically puts Luminosity 1 point ahead of EU United.
Yeah.
Simply because they played more sets than EU United have played to this point. But just the match individually, I don't know about the Amaterasu last pick for Kiki. That was the one that was kind of weird to me. We just said it. The meta is, trending towards aggression. Early game picks, being able to snowball that lead, and just be able to like a snowball from there and win the game off of that. Amaterasu is not the early game pick. He's more of a middle to late game, with the strength being in the late game. And it only got to 34 minutes. That's not super late game. That's the middle late game. That's is she effective at that point of time? Yes, but it's compared to how the first 30-minute goes. It's kind of it showed to be a little too late for the Amaterasu to make the impact that she wanted to make. Sino Shore was already behind. Aurora didn't have the game he wanted to on the Fafnir, and Snoopy, Barrett and Snoopy, that was a fun match to watch, but it was, Mask was putting a lot of tension on Snoopy during the middle part of that match, and it kind of favored in went to Barracuda's favor. So the game one was all about that Amaterasu last pick. Game two was more of the same. Snoopy not having a good matchup, going 1-5, and then Herwin not showing up at all, going 0-4-2 on the Raw. So, what did you see? I went back and watched this set on YouTube a couple days later, and again, it was just like I said. Game one, it was the Amaterasu last pick. I don't hate it, but you got, for it to be effective in the late game, you have to have been effective somewhere else in the early game. You had to even the game out a little bit more than it was, but at the time she got to the point where she is effective, and in game two, I don't understand the Raw pick. I don't like just the draft in general.
Yeah.
Snoopy on Rom, you can't really go wrong with, but it didn't really work in this game. So
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from with the Amaterasu, right? Obviously, she lacks a lot of the pressure that the other solo laners bring, right? If you compare her to an Erlang Shen or to a Kokolon even, it's just opens you up to so many invades because you are lacking pressure on that side of the map, and if they are freely allowed to invade you, they can easily snowball off of that. And in that case, you run into big issues because if they snowball too heavily, they can just end up making your late game irrelevant. As you said, they ended the game at 34 minutes. At that point in time, I don't think the Erlang Shen has necessarily fallen off enough that the Amaterasu is suddenly a much better pick than him. And obviously, you had Mask doing well, setting up a lot on the Ratatosker, Chef playing the Ganesh, which is obviously a very highly prioritized pick because he is so good. And you had Basking and Barra both going off quite a lot, so it was always going to be hard to fight into this team. And yeah, I'm not sure if the meta is favoring Trifecta too much. I think the one big early aggression pick that Kiki really had, if you think about it, that he was amazing on, was the Odin. And with how Odin's Bird Bomb was nerfed, I'm not sure if he still has good enough clear and good enough damage threat against warriors specifically that you can really solo lane well, still solo lane well with him. And in that case, I think Trifecta's overall just in a bit of an issue because unlike a lot of other teams, unlike even I'd say this LG roster with Mask and Aquarius in duo in solo and jungle, I don't think the meta favors them too much.
Kiki's always liked these solo laners like Vamana and Nike and Amaterasu and these major team fight gods in the late game that can really affect the team fight and turn it in one form or the other. and the meta's not favoring that right now. You said Erlang Shin and Kukulin are kind of two top picks right now, and what do both of those bring? And that's early lane pressure with the Minx form giving the Erlang Shin a Fatalis effect and being able to clear the wave, and with his pin and his Mink form combination, and Kukulin just with the one and the all that does, the fact that he can transform at any time in the match, even at level 2, it really is favoring these high pressure middle game warriors that can, along with their jungler, can put pressure on that side of the map and just run with the ball from there. I think if we see Trifecta stretching these games out another 20 minutes, then I think we see some of their picks come to more fruitful promise, and we get maybe a Trifecta win here. But the games were between 30 and 35 minutes each, and it was not like that's just not enough time to really give the late game picks of Amaterasu and Rom enough time to really get anything going at that point.
Yeah, and that is, I think it's the main reason why they're struggling right now is just the meta changes. And yeah, so one thing I want to say just is I don't necessarily dislike the Raw pick, but I think there's things wrong with the composition he picked him into, right? And going Raw against Kukulin and a Ratatosker, I think is a risky move to make, because the Kukulin can just blink in out of nowhere, ult you, and then go on you without you having much of a way to really escape from his damage. And obviously Rat can do almost the same thing. And that is going to make your life very hard as a Ra. And then obviously they were behind from fairly early on in that game, if I recall correctly.
Yeah,
so the Ra's
Game 2 was a little bit more of a stomp than Game 1 was.
Yeah. So the Ra's always going to struggle, right? The Ra is good from ahead, and he is not that good from when he's even or behind. And it makes sense for them to draft him, right? They had a strong early comp, especially on the solo lane side with the Erlang Shen and the Raven. So if they had actually gotten a lot of pressure on that side and been able to snowball to a certain degree, the Ra would have worked great, but they just didn't really do that. And at that point in time, the Ra doesn't have enough damage to be a threat, he doesn't have enough healing to be a threat, and he is too easily killed to actually get a lot of his healing off. And that's where he becomes a weak pick. So the Ra being bad, I think, is just down to the circumstances and down to the fact that they weren't able to get a lead with the Raven Erlang Shen combination in the solo lane.
Yeah, when I said I had a problem with the Raw pick, I meant more of who he was picking it into against. Like, because as you said, Aquarius on the Kukulin can dive and can't really get away from his damage, especially if you're on a card like Raw, who doesn't have movement speed outside of his passive.
And his passive. Sorry, didn't say anything.
Rat can land on top of you. He can dash in. There's a lot there. Even Jeff Hinla on the Ganesh can dash in, silence you out. Barracuda on the Jingwei can land right in front of you, just shoot you in the face. And Soul, basking on the Soul, it's that 2 is a huge area. The Supernova is a huge area. And he can paint the ground with his 1 and can do it really fast, and you can't really outrun that ultimate.
Yeah.
So
and lastly, I think, just want to say it as well, the Qingwei, with her ult, she's going to be pretty good at chasing a Ra down as well, right? Because the Ra, again, he already has trouble getting away. If he gets away with low HP, where he would then normally be able to heal up, the Chingwei can start chasing him with the ult, and at that point in time, you are really in trouble. So yeah, that was also a good pick against him, I thought.
I would have liked to see her win on somebody other than Raw. His Raijin in game one was all right. It wasn't the best, but it was a lot better than his Raw in game two. And Raijin has a quick escape he can use with his Thunder Crash out. We haven't seen him play a lot of the Morgan this split, or has he played the Morgan at all this split? And that was one of his best gods in the spring or in the summer, so yeah, that's questionable. I mean, why not play one of your better gods instead of picking somebody with no movement speed abilities against a comp that has nothing but movement speed abilities? Like, it's a little questionable pick.
Yeah.
But I do understand why you pick him, because if you can find a lead in that solo lane off of the Robin and the Erlong Shin, that healing in the late game, even if you're not building particularly to heal your team, and you're just building damage, it's still a lot of sustain to give your team there. But they never found a lead. Game two was a complete stop, and the Raw pick kind of hurt them after that.
Yeah, that's just what you risk when you pick Ra. Just a quick side note: he played Morrigan once this split against Gatekeepers, and they did win that game. He went 5-3-9, and Cynosure popped off massively with 14-1-6. So yeah, Morrigan. Then what is the takeaway that we have from this set? Right? What effect does it have on NA overall?
Well, it hurts Trifecta because they couldn't find a point here, and they did 2-0 later, or they did 2-0 on Sunday, and they got the 3 points from there. But if they had found a split here and picked up that extra point, they'd be sitting at 8 right now. Going into the Sunday where they have a set with Space Station Gaming, who is currently setting at 11 points. If Trifecta were at 8 points and they were able to 3-0 Space Station this Sunday, then they would be in that third spot because they'd have the head-to-head with the tie in points. They would have that head-to-head. But now Trifecta has to 2-0 on Thursday, or at least split on Thursday in their match against Allegiance. And then if they split with Allegiance, they have to 2-0 Space Station. If they 2-0 Allegiance and split with Space Station wins. Like, Space Station will be at 12 points. Trifecta would finish with 11. So
yeah,
that's how this affects it. Trifecta couldn't find that split with the 1 point. It's depending on what happens in this Allegiance game. If they can't find a 2-0 against Allegiance, and then they lose 2-0 to Space Station and Vigilant, the Paint to Beyond, Grave, their new name. It's no longer SPL Gatekeepers, it's Team Vigilant. If they can find a 2-0 and they're set against, I believe it's Cryptic this Sunday, then both teams are setting at 8 points, and they'd have to have that tiebreaker to see who goes to Super Regional in that fourth point. So it doesn't affect Luminosity at all. Luminosity, they've got 16 points. They're setting up 1 point ahead of E United, but like I said, Luminosity has played 6 sets, and the United has only played 5 sets. So that's why a one-loss team is higher ranked than a undefeated team right now.
Yeah.
But it hurts Trifecta more not finding the split here.
Yeah, Luminosity and the United, they're both locked in for first and second place, right? Either one of them. They can't drop any lower anymore, obviously, because Trifecta's at most going to get 6 points added to their 7 points, and at that point they're going to have 13 compared to United's 15 and 6 and Luminosity's 16 respectively. So there's no way either of those teams are that team's catching up. Space Station's only got 1 set left. The most points they're going to get are 14. Again, not catching up to United and Luminosity. So yeah, that already means both of those teams aren't going to be facing each other either in the first round of Super Regionals. It's going to be good for them, I guess. And yeah. Well, Trifecta, they've struggled so far. As we just said that the meta probably doesn't favor them too much. I'm still not too worried when it comes to the matchup against Allegiance, because Allegiance has probably struggled the most out of any NA team right now. And they should be able to owe them, right? Still with what we've seen, and yeah, that's a set that I'm really looking forward to as well. Or well, no, I'm not. Why am I lying? I'm not looking forward to that set at all. They should just go there.
If Trifecta can 2-0 Allegiance, and Vigilant can't find a split with E United on Thursday, then 1 through 4 in North America have already been decided. Trifecta finds a 2-0, if Vigilance can't find the 2-0 and they find a split instead, Trifecta's sitting at 10 points, Vigilant sitting at 6 points, with 1 set left to be played. Vigilant can't catch Trifecta or Space Station, so 1 through 4 would already be set.
That would be boring.
So if Allegiance somehow finds the split with Trifecta, and Vigilance somehow finds a split with the United, then they can both realistically end up with the same amount of points at the end, and they'd have to have that play-in game.
Yeah. I guess that's a thing. I don't really see that happening though. So yeah.
I don't see Vigilant splitting with E United. So there's I see E United taking that one 2-0. So there's much to do about nothing. But if Trifecta can't find a win, if Trifecta comes away with 0 points this weekend, Vigilant face Cryptic. If Vigilant 2-0's Cryptic then, and they end up with 8 points, and Trifecta is stuck at 7, Vigilant is in with 8 points at the 4th spot. So
yeah, I think
the picture is a little bit more clear in North America because we only have 3 teams, and realistically, one of those teams is already guaranteed to make it to Super Regionals. It's just depending on which position they're going to make it in. And EU has 4 teams, and all 4 teams can finish 3rd. So,
well, 5 teams really. Don't forget about the burritos, my man.
All right, I'll give you that. 5 teams, but they can't finish 3rd. They can only finish 4th.
Yeah, I haven't done the math, but still, they could potentially still get to Super Regionals.
But
actually,
in North America, Space Station is already in. They're either going to be 3rd or 4th.
Yeah.
Trifecta and Vigilance. Trifecta can finish in 3rd, or they can miss. Vigilance can finish in 4th, or they can miss. And Trifecta could be 4th. Like, Space Station is already guaranteed. Vigilance and Trifecta are fighting it out. But Trifecta hopefully getting into that 3rd spot. Vigilance is hoping to get into that 4th spot. So it's a lot clearer in North America than it is in EU right now.
yeah, definitely is. The one thing that could be exciting though is Allegiance just cleaning up the field from all the way in the back, right? Because the matchups they have, one is going to be tough against Trifecta, but again, meta not necessarily favoring them. Whereas I think with how bad Allegiance has looked, the meta is sort of favoring them because they have a lot of focus on the solo and jungle synergy. And the other team they're going to be facing is Noble, which is obviously a team that has struggled as well quite a lot. And they can theoretically get to 8 points, which could put them ahead of Trifecta.
Yeah, but then you're hoping Vigilance doesn't, or Vigilant doesn't 2-0 crypt it, because Vigilant has the head-to-head against Allegiance, and would finish with, both teams would finish with 8 points of Vigilant, because they have the head-to-head. It would go in Vigilant's favor.
Yeah, well, in order for them to get 8 points, they would have to 2-0 Cryptic. Cryptic, they looked good this week, so I don't necessarily think it's unlikely that they're gonna split between each other, right? And Noble, they've only got one set left. They can't even get to 8 points anymore at this point in time. And obviously, same with Cryptic as well. They've only got one set left. So yeah, I think there's potential there. There's more potential there than for Burrito cleaning up the field from the back, right? Because of how the matchups look, but still, it's not the most likely scenario. I will admit that. And yeah, but still, I think one set that's going to be really important, and one set that we already touched upon, is obviously going to be the Trifecta against Space Station set. Because if Trifecta finds the 2-0, they still got a chance at making. Well, even if they split, they've still got a chance at making third place. If they also manage to 2-0 Space Station. Well, we were already hinting at this set being important when I think during week 2 or 3, when United was really starting to establish itself as the top card in NA. We were sort of talking about this potentially determining the second seed. Right now, it's looking like it's going to determine the third one, or well, it is, for the most part. So yeah, that's I think going to be the prime set for NA. Even though it's not going to change too much, as in who goes to Super Regionals overall. Again, unless Vigilant finds a massive upset against United. So yeah, I guess what I'm saying is, it's a good set. We should all watch it, if we can.
That's going to be a good set. It's not the highlight set, but it's going to be a good set. Even if Vigilance can't find a split with the United and Trifecta drops a game to Allegiance, there's a chance that Trifecta 2-0 Space Station and gets in. But there's 3, 4, and 5 are yet to be determined. I think 6, 7, and 8 are pretty much set in stone. But it's going to be a fun set. The E United and Luminosity set's the one that everybody's looking forward to. So it's going to be a good week in SPL and in both regions. But here in America, this is what we refer to as Championship Week, because both regions have their number one spot on the line this weekend. The 1 versus 2 are facing off each other. So there's a championship, not like world championship, but like split champions. We call this Championship Week.
Yeah. Well, the regional champion is going to be determined at LAN, of course. But sure, winning an online split is still a
Regular
big accomplishment. So yeah.
regular season, your regular split champions. That's what we're saying. The regular split championship. The regional championships will be determined at super regionals. The regular season champs or the regular split champs will be determined this weekend in both regions. But before we get into all that, there's one more set that I want to talk about, and not really a set, but a match, and not really a match, but a series of unfortunate events at your space station.
Yeah.
Game 2 in the Cryptic and Space Station set. Especially towards there at the end, or towards the end, it was like 10 minutes before the end, where Space Station puts up a good defense on their left side Phoenix, and they chase down, I believe, Gino and Vedium, and they put them in the base, and it's just Battle Chair, Sanford Soccer, and Final K. Final K on the Hercules is being chased by 4 players because Scary D is in the middle lane pushing out the wave. And Final K just takes him on a ride. All 4 players end up chasing him around. Sam for Soccer, they come down by back Phoenixes, or by back Harpies, not back Phoenixes, but back Harpies. Sam for Soccer jumps in and ults Zapman on the Circuit. That man dies and spreads the poison to both Homie Faye and Annister. Final K picks up Homie Faye, spreads the poison to Annister again. So Annister got 2 poisons now. Sam dies. And then Final K finishes off Annister, and then Final K and Shadow Chair are up against Jigs and Scary D. Shadow Chair is 1 hit from death, and Final K is just pushing people around with Hercules. It was really, really fun to watch.
Yeah.
That was kind of a long explanation as to what happened, but that's all that happened. Like it was like you thought he was dead. You thought Final K was dead in a 4v1, and then can't kill Hercules.
Yeah, that is a classic Herc moment. That is what Herc does sometimes if you allow him to do it. And yeah, it's just a lot of things that went wrong there, and obviously the play between Sam and Final K was amazing. Right, that's the main thing that needs to be pointed out, is him and Sam being able to coordinate that was massive. Right, they turned that fight around. What did I just say? Yeah, they turned that fight around. They turned that fight around with that move, and both deserve a huge amount of credit for it. Sam, right, he's still being questioned a bit as to how good he really is. He had that short stint on Eager in the summer where he wasn't really given too much of a chance, but during the few chances that he had, he didn't look good at all. And now he's back, and now he has made, or has hugely contributed to a play like that, and he's looking a lot better. And Final K is back in the SPL after being kicked from SOAR. Well, not from SOAR, from Space Station. And manages to find his revenge against him here. And that is amazing to him as well. And yeah, Space Station, well, what could they have done to really kill the Herc there?
Well, Final K was the star of the play. I think it all is on the back of Sam for Soccer, though, because he did get the ultimate off on Zapman, trading his life out for Zapman, but spreading the poisons to both Homie Faye and Aster, which are two of the major damage dealers that are going to be able to burst through the Hercules healing that on Final K, and so spreading that poison to Homie Fan Aster, and Final K getting picking up both of those kills really off the back of that poison spreading caused Final K to be the star of the play, but the setup was really from Sam for Soccer on the Circuit, and it's going to be overlooked, his contribution to that play in general. But I want to point that out. People who are just going to watch the game, the VOD, and say, "Oh, Final K is just a beast and did that all by himself." That was a team effort. Gino and Bedium really didn't have a say in that because they were already dead. But Shadow Chair and Sam for Soccer could have just ran away and let Final K die, but they didn't. Yeah, Sam ends up trading out his life, but they pick up 3 in return. And then Shadow Chair gets out with low health, and Final K finishes off Scary D, and what turned into a great defense from Space Station turns into a highlight play for Final K. And it was give Final K all the credit in the world, but you gotta give Sam for Soccer a asterisk there on the side, saying, "Hey, this wouldn't have been possible without that Circuit ultimate."
Yeah, give Sammy. Don't forget about Sammy. That is the main point here to be taken away. But yeah, Final K played it perfectly. There's a lot of criticism you can level against Space Station, right? Obviously, a lot of it was very unfortunate. Like, I think Andy dashed into the Herc push, where he was pushing away Satman, or was trying to push him back away from his own Phoenix, right? And well, Andy just ran into that, got pushed as well, got killed, and spread the poison again, or got the poison spread to him again. So yeah, there's a lot of criticism to level at that thing, first of all, even though it was unfortunate. And then the big point to talk about is how he was even allowed to survive there, right? Because he was surrounded by 4 people. 4 people were hitting him. He should have been dead. And I think a large part of why he wasn't dead was because he had a ton of healing, and Space Station did very little to counter that healing.
He had a ton of cooldown. He was at full cooldown between the Breastplate of Valor. He had the Spirit Robe, and he had the Miniature Geb ult. Forgot the name of the item. But yeah, he had that as well.
And Kile?
No.
What's it called?
No, the...
Oh, Genji's guard. Is it that?
Yeah, Genji's guard. Yeah, he had the cooldown. He didn't have the Geb ult. He had the Genji guard. My mistake. But he had full cooldown. Full cooldown. A lot of mana. Just off, the 250 he gets from having Heart of the Urchin, and the 300 he gets from having the Breastplate of Valor. So he had full cooldown, full, a lot of mana he could spam off. I've watched that game like 2 or 3 times right now or already, and at no point during that entire sequence of events did he drop below 75% mana. So he had plenty of mana to spam his abilities with full cooldown, and he had the passive from Shield of Regrowth, which every time you heal you get faster, plus the 300 health on top of Shield of Regrowth. So his build was perfect for Hercules.
Yeah. And Space Station's build weren't perfect for Hercules.
Yeah, they had one Pestilence, and no good way to apply that Pestilence onto Hercules.
Well, Pestilence is pretty easy to apply, right? You just stand next to someone and it applies. But yeah, sure. Still, right, a Pestilence by itself is just never going to be enough against a Herc, especially one that is going off quite a bit, like Final K was, right? I think it's worth pointing out that at that point in time, Team Cryptic was already had by quite a lot. They were, as you said, we've said, they were sieging a Phoenix, so that should tell you that they are in a position to win the game anyway. But yeah, they really dropped the ball there. Space Station, that is. They allowed themselves to be just completely comboed because, again, they walked into a choke point without visions, which is what actually was the downfall of a lot of good teams this week. Dignitas as well. Yeah, so the fact that they didn't have enough anti-healing to really take down the Herc reliably is something that is an issue, and yeah, they should have really countered him better. Because in a lot of cases you can make the argument, yeah, but they're just gonna fall back and then heal out of combat. But Herc can't do that. Herc's heal, to a large point, is in combat.
Yeah, he gets a good amount of heal when he pops it, but then it turns damage done to him into healing. So it's a lot. It does a lot in combat. The usage of it while he's fighting is huge as compared to just using it out of combat. So yeah, you're right.
And yeah,
And I do like the Nemesis ban from Cryptic, knowing that they were going to go Hercules. Because if you can't get through his healing, you got to burst him down. And without that Nemesis ult to shred his protections, it's going to be a hard time to burst the Hercules down with that healing. So Osiris was the first ban, and then Nemesis was the second ban. So they banned Nemesis away before any of the picks were being made. They made a good pick, or a good ban there with the Nemesis.
yeah, I think a lot of the picks they made and the bans they made sense in that situation, right? They also picked the Circuit for Sam, obviously. Circuit, a big counter to healing, and it's part of what really allowed Final K to go off and to have a great game. And yeah.
Yeah, Herc was their last pick, so there was a whole other banning phase before Herc was picked. But Space Station, they had picked up Sobek before banning, before that second ban phase. And Space Station thought Sobek was going into the solo lane, so they banned out Ganesh and Sylvanas. And then they picked Hercules. So there was, they outsmarted Space Station to a certain extent. They outpicked them to a certain extent.
Yeah.
And Cryptic in this team, this current roster, I think if this is the roster that they started the season with, they could be right in the thick of things in that third and fourth, fifth, kind of fighting for that fourth and fifth spot. But, they weren't able. This wasn't the roster they started the season with, and it hurt them. It's really hurt them. And I think this is a good team. I think it was just a little bit too late.
Yeah. I think even if they hadn't made it to those top four spots, right, or they hadn't been in direct contention for the third spot with the likes of Space Station, I think they would have at least been at the same level as an SPL Gatekeepers. And when that happens, they would have had a legitimate shot at making Super Regionals, or at least making the Gauntlet LAN. Not at the Gauntlet LAN, obviously. Everyone makes the Gauntlet LAN. The Wildcard LAN. Yeah. And yeah, obviously they still have that, right? Because the Gauntlet is going to be there anyway, and they're going to be playing in the Gauntlet anyway. And right now, it's going to really come down to those two teams, I think, to Gatekeepers or well, now Team Vigilant, obviously, and Cryptic, assuming they both don't make it to Super Regionals directly, which obviously Gatekeepers still has a shot. Vigilant still has a shot. I will never not call them Gatekeepers, man. That's annoying.
Yeah, well, this is the first week after their name change. It's kind of understandable right now.
Just call them Pain and the Boys.
Pain and the Boys, or Pain's new team.
Yeah, if Variety can have a new team, so can Pain.
Don't count out Noble just yet. I think Noble has a good enough roster that they can put something together in the Gauntlet. But I am looking at Vigilant and Cryptic to be major players in that Gauntlet land.
Yeah. And the entire Cryptic situation is interesting, right? Because of how it all unfolded now. We already talked about Vivian last week. I think this is a good place to talk about him again. Because he kicked his entire team, picked up 4 of those Cryptic guys who actually were already on the roster together, playing in the Combine before that. And now he's kicked himself with huge asterisks or whatever, asterisks, and brought in not Chino, who was actually, I think he had to rename himself actually.
Was Aruzi's solo laner that was on enemy for the first 2 weeks of the spring split.
But that's apparently wrong though. I've heard that that's not actually him. He's not actually Iruzi's. It's actually his brother, who's Iruzi's.
Yeah, I haven't heard that yet.
It was written in chat during the game by, who was it? Some other SPL player, NA SPL player. Can't think of the name right now. Someone.
Well, see, that's the point. I turn off chat when I'm watching the games.
Yeah, I just caught it. That's somehow randomly.
Cause Twitch chat's always the same. It's always a rat has no boots, or this guy's feeding. He's the problem, or weekend sucks. Like I don't. You've heard it once. You've heard it a billion times. Just turn chat off and just watch the games. Yeah.
Well, anyway, I just want to say he actually had to rename himself. I think because in the Combine he was called Genocide.
Yeah.
And I guess Hyras didn't like that name.
Yeah, that's not a politically correct name. Right? That's a bad name. So
yeah.
So I understand that.
Another lesson learned: if you want to be in the SPL, maybe don't name yourself Genocide, or something like that.
Or don't be a jackass like Vivian. So yeah.
Yeah, that as well. Obviously, right now it's surprising that they're even allowed to play. To be honest, to me, because it's looking really like Vivian intentionally kicked his own team to bring this team into the SPL.
Yeah, and then I don't know if you saw what Weekend put on Twitter in response. Vivian basically said on his Twitter account, says, I've decided to retire from professional Smite and give my spot over to not Gino. And Weekend's response to that was, bullshit, you got kicked.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting, right, because we already heard about the story last week again, where he didn't allow his team to pick up an orc because he would have lost power over the team, and he would have been kicked by the rest of his team. Now they've been picked up by an orc, and he has lost power over the team, and has been kicked by the team. Well, he kicked himself. Winky face.
We saw this coming. I don't want to say I saw it coming because I didn't know they were going to get signed by a roster, but you had to know as soon as they got signed by a organization that Vivian was out off the team.
Yeah, after what he looked like in last week, right? It was pretty clear that this would happen if they got picked up by an org. Obviously, he was intentionally not, as I said, he was not allowing his team to sign with an org just because he didn't want to be kicked. So yeah, the change of heart is really surprising, and that's why I think, or that's why I think it's unlikely that he actually had a change of heart, and it's more likely that he was just intentionally sort of colluding to bring this team into the SPL, even though they hadn't qualified in any way, shape, or form. But obviously that is impossible to prove unless we get some logs from somewhere, which we're probably not going to
Yeah.
get.
In that being said, I do think this cryptic team, as it is, as the roster is set up right now, is better than that Mighty Storm roster ever was. But kind of a shitty way to lose your SPL spot, right? Like your captain kicks four of you, and then the very next week gets kicked himself, and so the entire roster is different. And basically, the Mighty Storm team lost their spot without ever having lost to Cryptic. So it's kind of a
Yeah.
shitty way to lose yourself. But this is by no fault of Cryptics. Like Medium and Final K and everybody on that roster, that there's nothing to do with them. It's just kind of a shitty
Yeah.
way if you're Uzi or if you're Plasma to lose your spot in the SPL.
Yeah, well, I think again it comes down to whether they actually colluded with Vivian. I can understand them wanting to get back into the SPL, and I can understand them to just take a spot on an SPL team if it's offered to them, which is what Vivian did. If they were intentionally going in with the thought that, yeah, we're going to play with Vivian for 1 week, then he is going to leave, and then we're going to bring in Chino, then it's also scummy from them. But again, no proof of that. So I'm not going to accuse
That
anyone
well,
of doing that type of stuff when we have no proof or no real evidence to suggest that that's what happened, outside of just
that
motive.
see to me that would imply Vivian doesn't want to get paid
Oh,
unless
well,
unless unless Cryptic is paying him to go away. Like, and then that's shady, even after the fact. Like that's really shady. But the only way I see that, the scenario you're putting forth actually turns out to be true is that if Cryptic pays Vivian to go away.
yeah, well, I can see another reason why he would do it is just because he is vindictive, or he would be vindictive towards his old team who tried to have him kicked through high
I,
res.
I think there's vindictive, and then I think there's getting paid money. Like, yeah, screw screw vengeance or vindictive or whatever you might be feeling. Just pay me.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Again, I don't know what type of person Vivian is. Right now, he's not looking too good with all that has happened, and I don't know if he is vindictive. If he is, then I can see him doing this just purely to piss off his old team. Because what better way to take revenge on them by just kicking the entire team, including yourself, and bringing in an entirely different roster?
It's kind of shady and shitty to me, if you ask me. But hey, it's all in the past
Yeah.
now. There's nothing to be done unless Hi-Rez can somehow prove that Cryptic paid Vivian to go away, which I don't think they did. I think he was just flat out kicked by Bedium and Final K because he's a crappy player.
See, the entire reason why I'm questioning this is because we know he had authority over the team, right? He was the captain, and unless anything happened between week 2 and 3, he didn't change. He didn't lose his captain status, right?
Well, it could be the fact that the the rest of the team before Vivian picked them up had already had a deal worked out with Cryptic that they were going to get picked up by Cryptic when they
No,
joined the Challenger Circuit.
well, wait, the four guys that were kicked are the four new guys.
The four new guys.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense because the
I
other
don't,
guys actually had a deal lined up with a different org, right?
and okay, yeah, they had Era or ERA or Era Eternity is what I'm gonna call it
Yeah, yeah.
because that's how it's spelled. If Benium and Final K and the guys, the other two guys had a deal with Cryptic worked out before Vivian brought them in, and they had already had all the stuff signed and all the paperwork, their names were already on the contract. Then yeah, like there's nothing really Vivian can do about losing his power in that situation because the deal is already done.
Yeah, but the point still is, right? Vivian, as the captain, has the right to refuse to keep the captain spot to himself, regardless of what else happens, and just leave the other four guys hanging. And he's done it before, right? So why would he not do it again in this case unless he was getting paid or unless he was vindictive towards his old teammates or just wanted to bring a new team in the first place, even if it meant replacing him?
Yeah.
Right? People don't always act entirely logically, and logically it makes no sense for him to do it because he's not gonna get paid anymore. But as I said, people don't always act logically. So I can see him doing it.
All right. Speaking of not doing things logically, let's pick out our MVPs for this week.
Oh, we always do that logically, man. Do you have yours prepared? Because I really don't. I never have mine prepared.
I For EU this week, I'm gonna give it to Vote. Like I said, he did go 15, 2, and 9 in their one set against Elevate. It was a set that Rival really needed to win, and Vote was the star of the team in that set. He was the most consistent. He had the best stat line. He just played really well on the Ho Yi both games, and so I'm going to go ahead and give it to Vote Rivals Hunter for EU. And in North America, North America is a little bit tougher.
Yeah.
I guess I'll go ahead and give it to Panda Cat. Even though E United was favored to beat whoever it was they beat, I can't remember. Allegiance. Um, you know, Weekend put a lot of pressure on Benji in the early game. Got first blood on Benji, but Benji played safe after that, having wards over there, knowing that Weekend liked to kind of babysit Cyclone Spin early in the game. That's their reputation. It's what they know to be true. And so instead of Scream putting focus on the Benji side of the map, he really took took his focus and put it on Matt Yankee and helped out Panda Cat get a lead in that lane. And that just Panda Cat has been like the he's been solid. We've pointed his contribution to this EU team or EU United team out regularly on this show, but for people who don't listen to us every week, Panda Cat kind of gets lost in the height that is Benji and Scream, even though he has been very solid. And so Panda Cat taking the ball and running with it and really carrying E United through that first game where Benji didn't really get off to the start he wanted to. That was huge. Like if it's not, it's that just shows you that it's not just Benji and Scream, that it's the other players on the team as well. And if one of those two are hurting, that the others can pick up the slack and really run with it from there. So Panda Cat gets my MVP for North America this week.
Yeah, two hunters.
And hopefully, I bought you enough time to decide on yours.
Yeah, of course. I have mine, by the way. I really do have them. So yeah, I'm also gonna give mine to two hunters, but to two different hunters actually. So the big EU team that won two big victories this week, 2-0 sets, was obviously Obey Alliance. They 2-0'd both Valence and Energy. And in both of those sets, Ataraxia looked amazing, especially against Energy, where he was really the main carry of the game, it seemed like. So yeah, my MVP is gonna go to Ataraxia for this week. He doesn't get too many MVPs, so he really deserves this one. Let's be nice to Ataraxia for a bit. And then on the NA side, another team that won two victories this week, one against a big opposition team and one in extremely dominant fashion was Luminosity. And their hunter is obviously Barracuda. Played well against Snoopy in lane in both of their games against Trifecta, which is very impressive because we've sort of hyped up Snoopy to be one of the best hunters in NA as well, which definitely has its merit, right? Or which is definitely based on merit as well. And then he just completely manhandled Day to Remember in the set against Vigilant, at least in game 2, and again was one of the main carrying forces against that team as well. So he's getting my MVP for the NA side this week. So yeah, we had a lot of carry performances this week, I guess. Right, Sabo?
Yeah, I agree. The ADC, the hunter role in general, really the reason why I didn't give Ataraxia too much credit, because Obey's kind of locked into that spot, and Votes and Rival really couldn't afford to split with Elevate. They needed a 2-0 Elevate, and Vote was a big factor in that to keep their hopes alive. So he gets my MVP this week over Ataraxia, though Ataraxia did play outstanding this week. And then I say that about Ataraxia, but I go ahead and give my MVP to the Panda Cat, who is on an undefeated team himself. But that was more of me looking at the fact that it doesn't just have to be Benji and Scream. The Panda Cat, you have to kind of give Panda Cat his credit for doing what he's able to do on this team, even though it's overshadowed at times by Benji and Scream. So
yeah, when he gets the chance to shine, he definitely deserves to get some credit for it as well. So yeah. Well, what we really have left to do now is to talk about the sets that we're gonna be looking forward to in week 5. We've already touched on them quite a lot so far, so I think I'm just gonna go ahead and sum them up, if that is okay with you.
Yeah.
So yeah, the first big set that we're gonna see is going to be Rival against Energy. We've already talked about it, how it can determine who goes to LAN, right? Either of those teams, if they find a 2-0, has good shots at making it to Super Regionals directly, assuming that Rival also finds the 2-0 Burrito, which is probably fairly likely. If they split, they're both putting themselves into a bad position, really. The other set that we're going to have is going to have a similar impact. with Elevate and Valence facing each other, again, the winner likely directly qualifying, the winner directly qualifying for Super Regionals in the third spot, even, I think, not directly in the first spot, but directly qualifying. So it's going to be a game that has a massive impact. Then we're going to see Obey and Dig basically fight over the crown of EU, assuming that Obey doesn't manage to 2-0 Elevate on first day. If that is the case, then we could obviously see fancy matches between those two, because nothing will be on the line except for pride and that sort of stuff. And on the NA side, the big sets to look forward to for the first one is Space Station Gaming against Trifecta. If Trifecta 2-0 ALG, I don't think their life is going to be on the line, but if they don't, then they're really going to have to find victories over a victory over Space Station to qualify. And if they do manage to 2-0, then beating Space Station could secure them the third place in NA, which would obviously a fairly big deal as well. And then the other set that we're looking forward to is obviously going to be Luminosity against E United. Again, a fight for the crown at Super Regionals. For the crown of NA before Super Regionals. So that is definitely something to look forward to as well. And I guess those are all the games that are going to be really exciting.
One thing to say about the E United Luminosity match, it comes down to me about what start both games get off to. LG likes to play the slow game, kind of take a buff here, take a buff there, kill you here, and then take this buff, and then 12 minutes into the match, go for Gold Fury, and it's just like a slow bleed. It's like a death by 1,000 cuts, where they're not delivering one big blow. It's more of a little by little over the time. And if E United can speed the game up like they have been able to the entirety of the soft split, then we could see E United run away with it. I think if LG can somehow slow the game down and get it to the place that they want it, then LG has the upper hand here. Even though if we end up playing LG's style of game, it's kind of a little bit more even than if E United gets off to the hot start and is able to speed up the game and run away with it. So
yeah, we've talked about it already, right? That E United, like a team like Elevate, is a team that does really well when they manage to get a snowball starting. And if they can manage to do that against LG, then they could easily run over them. But LG is a team that I think it's going to be hard to do that against, just because of how they play the game themselves, right? The reason they do a slow bleed is because they are consistently able to slowly be built into a lead. And if they manage to do the same against this United roster, or if they manage to not fall behind at least, then it could be a really even match between both of those teams, and that would be a treat to watch. Because again, we've talked about the different players that they have. We've talked about Bannercat. We've talked about Barracuda, both of our MVPs for this week for NA. And if they end up facing each other in the late game, and if guys like a Mask and a Scream, or guys like an Aquarius and a Benji, even though Benji is clearly the better player, I have to say that because otherwise you're going to get angry with me. And if guys like a Baskin are going to be facing each other all in the late game, it's going to be a massively exciting match to watch. So yeah, lots to look forward to in that set.
And we could potentially get 3 games out of this set.
Could we?
If Vigilance finds the split, and then the E United and LG split, they have the same record with the same head-to-head. So they'd have to play a third game.
Brilliant, yeah. Let's hope we see that.
If E United 2-0 is vigilant though, and all E United has to do is win one game. Even with the split against LG, they would be number one.
Yeah.
So this is probably going to be the best split or the best set of the 6-week split. So we get into the five game sets at Super Regionals. This is probably going to be the highlight split or the highlight set of the split. Just based on the fact that I don't think we've ever had a one-loss team and an undefeated team facing off against each other this late in the season.
We'll see. As it is a North American game, I already have to disagree with that because of my national pride or continental pride or regional pride as a European. But sure.
It's a one-loss team versus an undefeated team in the last game of the split.
Well, unless United is defeated.
Well, let's hope that doesn't happen. Obey and Dignitas can't make that claim because Dignitas has 2 losses. So,
come on, what is the difference between 1 loss and 2 losses, really?
1 point.
2 points, actually.
2 points.
But yeah, sure. Again, if this matchup is going to be exciting anyway, right? No matter what United does on first day, as compared to the Obey-Dig matchup, because if Obey manages to find the 2-0 over Elevates on first day, then it's not going to matter anymore how the matchup between them and Dig ends. So yeah, from that perspective, if things go according to plan on first day, the NA matchup is genuinely gonna be more exciting than the EU one.
I do like the fact how Hi-Rez set the schedule up where Obey and Dignitas, the 1 and 2 teams from last split, would be facing each other, and then Space Station and Trifecta, who they thought would be 1 and 2 in this split, were actually 3 and 4, and we get E United and LG actually 1 and 2 facing off against each other as well.
Yeah, they always do that, right? I mean, who else do we have facing each other if you look at it? We've got Energy and Rival, 3 and 4 out of EU. And we've got Luminosity against United, 3 or 4 out of EU. And we've also got Poppies against Burrito, 7 and 8 out of EU. And we have Cryptic and Vigilant, both the new teams coming in to NA. And then obviously we have the leftovers with Valence and Elevate 5 and 6, and with Allegiance and Noble 5 and 6.
But it doesn't always work out that way, where Obey and Dignitas are top 1 and 2. You know, it could be Obey and Dignitas 1 and 3, or LG and E United or 1 and 4. Or, you know, they set the schedule up that way, but it doesn't always work out that way. We got it to where it works out that way now.
Yeah.
Obey and Dignitas are 1 and 2. LG and E United are 1 and 2. So.
Or it is entirely rigged.
Oh yeah, we know that.
So yeah.
Otherwise, why would Final K survive that? Final K should have been it's rigged. Final K doesn't
totally
survive. You know, Final K's that's 100% death there. Final K's dead. And Space Station wins that game. It's not rigged at all.
Yeah, at that point they have 13 points and can still actually make first seed. Or can they? What did they do against Luminosity in the head-to-head?
They split with Luminosity. That's Luminosity's only loss.
See, they could have made first seed still, or second at least. Totally rigged.
But they lost. Yeah, they lost 2-0 to E United. So even if they tied with E United, they would still be second.
Well, that's assuming E United loses both of their sets, right? Stay at 15 points. No, that would never work anyway. They could have tied for second with LG. That's the point. So it's totally rigged. Also, I'm selling tinfoil if you want to have some.
I quit making tinfoil hats a long time ago.
See, that's something I wonder though. Do tinfoil merchants or tinfoil companies, do they spread conspiracy theories? So people buy more tinfoil for their tinfoil hats? Just think about it.
Uh, that's a question for God, man. Only he can answer that.
Yeah. Just think about, I want our audience to think about that as well as we end the podcast, unless you have any shoutouts you want to give.
Nope.
So yeah, in that case, that was it from the Tuesday Night Smite podcast for this week. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit that like button. Did you put that in there?
Yeah, I did. I think it's a lot more forceful. Like, hit the like button. Come on, hit it.
I don't like to be forceful though. And if you're gonna if you want to be forceful, you don't write hit that. You write smash that like button on YouTube or SoundCloud.
I mean, if you're going out with a girl and it's not like I'm gonna smash that, I'm just gonna hit that.
You know, hit also has a bit of a different meaning.
Yeah, regional differences. Regional differences.
Yeah.
How about tap that? Tap that like button.
Yeah, tap that like button. Just going through that. This ending is way too long. So yeah, if you want to be notified when new episodes come out, you can follow us on Twitter. What?
Said you're the one who fucking brought it up.
Well, you put it in there. See, that caught me off guard, like my question in the beginning caught you off guard. So we have gone full circle.
Bum bum bum.
Anyway, if you want to be notified when new episodes come out, you can follow us on Twitter. You can follow us there as well if you want to see our predictions as the games go live. You can also subscribe to us on YouTube, or you can follow us on SoundCloud. And yeah, thank you all for listening to the show this week. And thank you, Sabo, for being here and putting random things in our notes that will catch me off guard. And with that in mind, good night.
Bring the entertainment.
Yeah, you do. Totally do. Anyway, good night. Good Smite.